Welcome, everyone. Just to bring everyone up to speed, tonight we have Rabbi Dr. Joshua Berman, who's going to give us a class on what is a berit and the marriage of God and Israel in Sefer Yehezkel. We do have weekly Monday night classes. I invite everyone to come join us over here with Rabbi Harold Sutton on the themes of the 6 perakim that we studied that week. And our next guest lecturer will be Rabbi Menachem Liebtag, who is coming in on Motzei Shabbat, November 7th. He's going to be giving a class on the Pirkei HaMikdash, the end of Sefer Yehezkel, and why it's a fitting conclusion for the Sefer. So please join us. It'll be over here approximately an hour and a half after Motzei Shabbat. After Shabbat's over, we'll keep you posted as to more times and dates. And we do have more lecturers, more scholars from Eretz Yisrael, from local. Rabbi Chaim Angel will be with us. Yael Ziegler will be with us again. So keep in touch and keep plowing through Tanakh together. Without any further ado, I'm going to just introduce Rabbi Dr. Joshua Berman. He's a professor of Tanakh at Bar Ilan University, author of 2 books, The Temple, Its Symbolism and Meaning, Then and Now, and another book, Created Equal, How the Bible Broke with Ancient Political Thought. So without further ado, Rabbi Dr. Joshua Berman.
Friends, Erev Tov to you all. First, I want to say that this is, to my mind and to my eyes, an incredible sight that there aren't very many places, anywhere really, not even in Eretz Yisrael, where hardworking balabatim, after a long day of work, will come to hear a public shiur, and not just something that's sort of on Parashat Shavua, which is a little bit familiar, or on some topic which is just by itself of great interest. But no, we have to find the most difficult prakim in Sefer Yehezkel. Really, kol hakavod, and it's really a big zchut for me to be able to be here with you. In the natural course of things, your erstwhile leader, Jesse, plans very far in advance, and many months ago already we discussed this and this evening and what the topic would be. But sometimes when we are in abnormal times, as we are now, when we are in difficult times, as we are now, to simply just sort of open the shiur, okay, we said Yehezkel Tet Zayin, and that's what we're doing, and that's, we're not going to budge from that, would almost seem to be insensitive. It's remarkable that in just the same way as very often a rabbi will get up on Shabbat morning and say, the things that happened this week, it's amazing. They're right there in Parashat Shavua. Well, I'll say appropriately for this, it's amazing. The very difficult things that are happening now are right here in the prakim that you have all studied in the past several weeks, these 10 prakim or so. And it's really not with Perek Tet Zayin that I would like to open tonight, but with some things that we find in Yehezkel, Perek Chaf. Perek Chaf. All of us have a sense that we live in historic times, that Am Yisrael has come back to Eretz Yisrael, that we are building together Medinat Yisrael Reshit Tzmichat Gulatenu, and when it's precisely when we have very difficult times like we've had the last couple of weeks in Israel that we say it doesn't seem to fit, it doesn't go together. How can this be Reshit Tzmichat Gulatenu when there's just such wanton shvichut damim, as it says in our parasha, Vatimelech Hamas. Hamas is shvichut damim according to one opinion. But what we see in what you have learned in Yehezkel Perek Chaf is that the Geula is not necessarily, there's no promise that the Geula will be al mei menuchot, as we say in Hebrew, on a red carpet, with everything hunky-dory the whole way. In fact, Yehezkel tells us about a process of Geula that's quite the opposite. In Yehezkel Perek Chaf, starting from Pasuk Lamed Gimel, the Navi says, Chayani ne'um Hashem Elokim, im lo biyad chazaka, uvizroa netuya, uvechema shfucha, emloch alechem. That phrase, yad chazaka vizroa netuya, well, that we all know. That referred, of course, that was the way in which the original Geula, right, of Yetziat Mitzrayim is referred to. Yehezkel says there'll be a future Geula that will also have these features. We will all see Hashem's great hand. There will be things that are extraordinary, but also Yad Chazaka v'Zroa Netuya uvechema shvucha emloch alechem, with poured out fury. Meaning, you'll wind up back in Eretz Yisrael. There will be things that will make big history, but it's not necessarily always going to be easy. There's going to be chema shvucha. Hashem says, Pasuk Lamed Aleph, "V'hotzeti etchem min ha'amim, v'kibatzti etchem min ha'aratzot, asher nefotzetem bam, biyad chazaka uvizroa netzuya v'chema shvucha. V'eveti etchem umidbar ha'amim, v'nishpateti etchem sham panim el panim." This process of Geula will involve judgment. It will involve taking account of the failings of Am Yisrael. Kasher nishpateti et avotechem b'midbar eretz Mitzrayim. We know those that came out of Mitzrayim were not necessarily those that entered into Eretz Yisrael. Those that were worthy perhaps went in. Most that were not worthy did not go in. Ken ishafet itchem ne'um Hashem Elokim v'avarti etchem tachat hashavet v'eveti etchem b'masoret habrit. And so what we see is that sometimes, even when we know and we believe b'emunah shlema that we're living in very great times, times that have aspects of Geula to them, Geula does not necessarily mean an easy Geula. And ba'avonoteinu harabim, apparently for all sorts of lackings that we have collectively and in our country in Israel, unfortunately these are some of the times that we feel not only the yad chazakah and zroa netuya, which are normally what we associate with the times that we are in, but also elements of chema shvucha b'avonoteinu harabim. I wanted to focus tonight on a different parak from the recent prakim that you have been learning. Parak Tet Zayin. Parak Tet Zayin in Yehezkel is possibly the longest mashal that we have in the entire Tanakh. And it's a mashal that works on a bunch of levels. And I wanted to give a little bit of an introduction first to some of what we're going to see conceptually, go through some of the key psukim, and then really the whole purpose of tonight's shiur on Yehezkel Tet Zayin is to lead to something else entirely, which was originally part of the title, but apparently the steering committee felt the title was getting a little too long. As we're going to see, Yehezkel Tet Zayin is absolutely indispensable for understanding the first perek of Megillat Eicha. And I think Megillat Eicha, there's probably no other part of Tanakh that we know so well, as it were, because we read it every year, and yet we are so clueless as to what's going on there. I think most of us, even if we've tried to read it, how is it structured? Is there a beginning, an end? We will see tonight that what we're going to learn here in Yehezkel Tet Zayin really sets the table for understanding a lot of things in Eicha Perek Aleph. Okay, before we look at the psukim that I want to have, I need to lay out some background. The first background that we need to get clear on is the political background about the period in which things are happening, because there's lots of references here to various political events. We need to first have a map. We have a map here of Eretz Yisrael, okay, like this. In the map of the time, so we have Yehuda here, and maybe we have Tzor and Sidon and Edom and Moab. There are lots of little countries around. But also the map at this time, the larger map, has two other really big players. We have down here Mitzrayim, and we have sort of up here, off the map as it were, Ashur. This is before Bavel, but big empires of Ashur and Mitzrayim. Now, we need to understand, what does it mean to live in an age when you are a little country, Yehuda is right here, and there are other little countries around in this part of the world, but on both sides you have much larger empires, Mitzrayim and Ashur. To understand what this meant, it's really very much like what was going on in the world that we live in until not so long ago, where the world was divided between two superpowers, right? As we all know, after World War II, the Cold War, we had the United States as one superpower and the Soviet Union as another superpower. For all those countries that were not superpowers, that meant that they always had to try to figure out which side to be on. Every little country in the world wanted to have a relationship with one of the superpowers so that they would always have protection, so that they would always be part of something larger. Sometimes you would even have countries that would go back and forth. For example, Egypt until the Yom Kippur War was basically together with the Soviet Union, and then after the Yom Kippur War and Camp David, it jumped over to America. What this means here is the following. Each of these little countries, especially Yehuda, in the middle, is like a very little fish with very big fish around. Now, what can a little fish do in order to protect itself from very big fish? Well, one thing, I'm talking about real fish, one thing that fish can do sometimes is they make a school. It's not just so that we can make pretty documentaries about fish that they do that. They do that so that when you have all these little fish together and they're all circling, they're very big and they might scare off a large fish. Other times, what fish will do is they'll form some type of relationship with a very large fish, and that will protect them. What had to happen here at this time is that Yehuda, if she stands alone, she has no chance of survival. She has her own little neighbors to contend with, but most threateningly, she has to contend with these big empires, Mitzrayim to the south and west, and Ashur to the north and the east, which from time to time would move into these areas. And so Yehuda is always looking for who can she join up with in a relationship. Now, what does Yehuda have to offer an empire like Mitzrayim or an empire like Ashur? And the answer is that all these little nations would enter into what's called a vassal treaty. This is very important, very important. A vassal treaty that would be between a sovereign king, a powerful king, and the weaker king called the vassal. What would happen is that Israel would practically come, or any of these little countries, would practically come begging to the larger country and say, we want protection from you. Well, that would then give power to, let's say they turn to Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim would say, okay, fine, we will offer you protection, but in return, we're going to make a deal that will allow you to remain independent, but there have to be a whole lot of terms that you're going to give us. Just like in business sometimes, if you find yourself in a position of strength and someone wants to join with you, make a deal with you, and they come begging, well, then you get good terms. So what might a superpower say? They might say, well, first of all, you have to pay lots of tax. Lots and lots of tax. Furthermore, if we are ever attacked, because Mitzrayim would say have enemies all around in Africa, if we're attacked and we blow the whistle, then you have to send troops to help us. And above all, if our arch enemy, Ashur, wants to attack us, then you can't just get out of the way and say that we're neutral and let them come through. No, you have to be our front line of defense in the face of invading armies from Ashur. Or the whole thing could be turned around. That is to say, Yehuda could sort of take measure of the winds. Who seems to be the stronger superpower on a given day? Ashur or Mitzrayim. And if they had been with Mitzrayim, they could just tear up the paper and one day say, Ashur, we'd like to turn to you. Maybe we'll get a better deal. So that little fish like Yehuda are constantly looking. They're desperate for some type of protection. And then, if they find one day that they've been sold out by their partners, which would happen all the time, right? Just like countries cheat each other all the time. Surprise, the Russians and the Germans made a deal. That fell apart before World War II. In politics, these things happen all the time. Then Yehuda would be desperate to find another partner, anyone, so that she wouldn't have to go it alone. Okay? So what we're going to see in this parak is a lot of discussion about this political reality of weak Yehuda, other weak nations around in the middle, and two very strong potential partners that sometimes she would join with Mitzrayim and sometimes she would join with Ashur in what is called this kind of vassal treaty. It's a partnership, but not between equals, but precisely between unequals. One side that's very strong, one side that's very weak. The strong side gets to determine the terms of the partnership, and the weak side is desperate to have someone to protect her. Okay? Now, there's just one more really important part of this political map, because there's one other player on the field. there's one other superpower. Up in Shemayim, we have HaKadosh Baruch Hu, also a superpower. I use that not in any type of joking way, because this is precisely what HaKadosh Baruch Hu offers Am Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu already in the Torah says, you are relatively small. You will never be a huge people. You will never, on your own, with your own strength, control entire empires. But I'll make you a deal. I am ready to be your sovereign if you are ready to be my vassal. This is the meaning of Brit in the Torah. Brit is patterned after this political reality where weaker powers would join together with stronger powers. So Hashem says, I will be the sovereign and you will be the vassal. And of course, I will offer you protection. That is what you want. And in return, I dictate the terms by which the relationship between us will conduct itself. And you know what? I'll even give you good terms. You really don't have to pay huge taxes. The truth is the korbanot and masrot that we have to pay are much, much, much smaller than existed in other cultures around. And you don't need to send troops to protect me. I'm pretty good at protecting myself. All you really have to do are these things that we call the mitzvot. But it's exactly patterned after that, so that we can say that part of what we have throughout the Tanakh, and certainly in this parak, is just as there is a discussion about strong kings and weak kings, sovereign kings and vassals in those political treaties, the sovereign in this story is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the vassal is Yisrael. Okay? But there's one other thing that we need to introduce here. And that is a third frame of reference. We have the political frame of reference, vassal treaties, sovereign kings, weaker kings, this political reality. When we put the added player on the political map of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then he is the sovereign king, turning to Yisrael, and as always, demanding loyalty. All of these kings, whenever they would make treaties, would demand loyalty from their vassal. That means not merely that they should pay taxes or provide troops, but the vassal was always forbidden from making a treaty with another king. And you can see what the parallel would be as well, right? Lo tichrot eleim brit, right? The Torah says in a number of places, we are not allowed to make a brit with another people. We are also not allowed to turn to other Elohim, right? Because we have to have loyalty to our sovereign king, just like any vassal, any political vassal would have to have loyalty, fidelity to his sovereign king. Now, the mashal that we have here in Yehezkel Tet Zayin speaks a lot about sovereign kings and vassals, and it speaks about HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Yisrael, but there's one more axis that's at play throughout this parak, and that is that the sovereign king, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is considered like a protective husband. And Yisrael is the dependent wife. The biblical conception of things, maybe it's true today, I leave that for everyone here to determine for themselves, is that the husband is meant to offer protection for his wife. That is his primary responsibility. And her primary responsibility is loyalty to her husband. Okay? Now we know in such an environment a woman wants to feel that she has someone on whom she can depend, someone who will protect her. Okay? And we know that sometimes my students in the university are very good at instructing me about this. You know, when a couple are going out, not married, a couple, and they've been going out for a long time, and then they break up. That happens, I'm told, yes? Then sometimes the girl is desperate. I mean, I see myself as I've been part of a couple for such a long time, and now alone? Lo matim li. I'm alone? It doesn't fit with the way I view myself alone. And then we run into the very great danger of what the Israelis call rebound. Rebound, okay? Rebound is where you're so desperate to have company, to be part of a union with somebody, that you'll take almost anybody, right? As long as they have, 2 feet in a kippah, or maybe even not. But the point is, as we all know, it's very important. It's a lovely thing to have a relationship with somebody, but you have to be very careful, and you have to choose carefully, and it's so easy to be taken advantage of when you're really desperate, or especially when you are delusional. Oh, he's perfect. Why? Because he showed up at just the right time, right? I mean, those two don't always go together, right? And when that happens, when a person is really very needy, a girl is very needy, and she, idolizes the next thing that walks by, that's a recipe for danger. We know how those stories can end, all right? And if you think I'm just talking about modern, this is Yehezkel Tet Zayin, okay? And so all 3 of these axes are going on at the same time. Discussion of sovereign kings and their vassal treaties, which is the template for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's brit with Am Yisrael, which is then spoken of metaphorically as the relationship between the protective husband and the dependent wife, and what is expected of her, and what happens when she doesn't do what's expected of her. Okay? Let's have a look at how these 3 weave in and out of each other in the perek that we're focusing on tonight. So let's have a look in this perek, and then we'll see how this really lays the table perfectly for the opening perek of Megillat Eicha. In Yehezkel Tet Zayin, let's look at Pasuk. We'll start from Pasuk Zayin. Already in the Pasukim that preceded, you will recall that Hashem, in this extended mashal, says he was walking along and he found a baby, an outcast baby girl. And this is a mashal for the situation of Am Yisrael at the moment of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Why are we like an abandoned baby girl? Well, we need protection. And a baby can't do anything for itself and has a zillion and one needs, just like Am Yisrael coming out of Mitzrayim, had no army, had no food, had no drink, all these needs. Okay? And Hashem says that he raised the baby up, and then we come to Pasuk Zayin. Rivava kitzemach hasadeh netatich, vatirbi, vatigdeli, vatavoi ba'adi adayim, shadayim nachonu, use'arech, tzimeach va'at erom ve'eryah. Hashem begins to notice that Am Yisrael is mature. These are very graphic images here. These are really about man and woman in the most physical sense. So Hashem is noticing that there is a potential here for a partnership. And the partnership is spoken of in loving, perhaps even erotic terms. Va'evor alayich va'erech v'hinei itech et dodim. I see that you are physically mature, meaning it is an appropriate time for us to make a union, just as it would be appropriate for man and woman under such circumstances to make a proper union. Va'efros kenafi alayich. I covered you, right? This is, if you'll recall, this is the very same lashon with which Ruth says to Boaz, "Ufarasta knafecha alamatcha ki goelata," right? You are to cover me. When a man puts his cover, figuratively, over a woman, this is a sign of marriage. And so Hashem says, I came to engage you in marriage. Va'efros knafi alayich va'achaseh ervatech va'eshavelach va'avo vivrit otach Ne'um Hashem Elokim, v'tehi li, v'avo bivrit itach. The brit is, on the one hand, Brit Sinai, which is based on vassal treaties between sovereigns and vassals, but also avo bivrit itach, marriage is called a brit. These are all working together. V'tehi li, that sounds on the one hand like Vatem tihiyu li mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh, which is the entrance into the brit in Shmot Yutet, but also vatihi li literally is I do, right? In marriage, right? Vatihi li, be to me. That is how you propose. It's in a number of places that this is how one proposes. Heyi li, be for me. Okay, so this is all wonderful. Historically, this of course is referring to the event of Ma'amad Har Sinai. Let's see what happens after that. We're going to read now 6 more psukim. Vayerchatzech b'mayim, vayishtof tamayich me'alayich. I cleaned you up from all the mess that you were when you were born, just a few weeks earlier. Va'asuchech b'shamen, va'albishech rikma, ve'en alech tachash, va'echbashech bashesh, va'achasech meshi, va'edech edi, va'etnat smidim al yadayich, ve'ravid al geronech,
ואתן נזם על אפך ועגילים על אוזנייך, ותרת תפארת בראשך, ותדי זהב וכסף, ומלבושך שש ומשי ורקמה, סולת ודבש, ושמן אכלת, vatifi b'me'od me'od vatitzlichi li mlucha. The husband says that he showered his wife with gifts. Okay? What might this be? Some of us might hear some resonance, some echoes of the Parshiot HaMishkan. Maybe it's that. But simply, if we're seeing this as a continuation of the mashal, of the history of Am Yisrael, Hashem showers Am Yisrael with all sorts of things that make her very prosperous. Well, what period does that bring us to? It brings us to the period of David, Shlomo, and that's the last thing that we saw. Vatifi b'me'od me'od vatitzlechi limlucha, right? Not just David, but the promise of dynasty through Shlomo. Now come the key psukim. Vayetzei lach shem bagoyim beyofyech. Starting here on this side of husband and wife and beauty, you were so beautiful that you developed a name. People, far and wide heard how beautiful this queen is. That is to say, how rich and successful Am Yisrael is. Vayetzei lach shem bagoyim beyofyech, ki kalil hu bahadari asher samti alayich ne'um Hashem Elokim. Of course you were beautiful. I made you beautiful. What did I spare you? Right? I bought you this and I bought you that. Okay. Now, pasuk tedvav, vativtichi beyofyech, vatizni al shmech. You had too much confidence in your beauty. Sometimes what happens is that when a girl is very beautiful and everyone tells her that she's very beautiful, then she gets certain airs about her, maybe certain confidence. Okay, I'm really thrilled to be able to give this shiur in New York City, and I'll tell you why. Israelis are often very worldly, and I can throw out all sorts of, they know about the Cold War that I mentioned before, but really what explains this concept at the beginning of Pasuk Tedvav, Vativtechi beyofyech, you got airs about yourself because of how beautiful you were. Vatizni al shmech, and you began to kind of flirt around, right, with other guys. I mean, this is exactly Billy Joel's song, Big Shot. Now, I don't know if I'm dating myself here. There's a younger generation here. He's old, but he apparently was married to this supermodel. And, he thought, wow, this is great. I'm married to a supermodel. But because she was a supermodel, and everyone looked at her that way, so she began to, do stuff with other guys. And he wrote a song about this. You had to be a big shot last night, about how annoying it was for him to see her go off and do this stuff. Well, that is what Hashem is saying here. Vativtechi beyofyech, vatizni al shmech, vatishpechi taznutayich al kol over lo yehi. You like to play the field. It's fun to get so much attention. And it's fun to see, how many more, and is this one more exciting, and this one more exciting, and this one more exciting. Now, as I said, rule number one in all of these treaties is fidelity, is loyalty. If Yehuda has a treaty with Mitzrayim and then suddenly Mitzrayim discovers that she goes off and makes a treaty with one of these other kingdoms, the deal is off. And of course that's the same way it is with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're not allowed to make a brit with anyone else. You make a brit with someone else, well then I'm not going to protect you anymore and you'll be on your own. And of course, if a wife is disloyal to her husband, then all of his obligations to her to be protective are now canceled. Okay, so let's see what happens here. The next several psukim discuss this in great detail about the ways in which she goes out to flirt and her interests in other men in sometimes very, very graphic terms that I won't share here, but so graphic that I would not be able to say these in public, but you're allowed, if you want to see what I have in mind, you can look at the Radak on Pasuk Chav Daled in your own time. Very graphic what goes on here. And then what we find is this. Let's go to Pasuk Kaf Chet. Kaf Chet. Hashem says, accusing his disloyal wife, Vatizni el b'nei Ashur mi bilti sovatech vatiznim v'gam lo savat. What happened? In the early times of the relationship between Am Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the time of David, in the time of Shlomo, The Navi says explicitly that we had Hashem hiniach lehem misaviv mikol oivehem. There were no issues. David only had victories for the most part. Shlomo, Bichlal never went out to war. Things were so good. That's because the protective husband was protecting his dependent wife. Hashem was fulfilling his role as a sovereign king protecting the vassal. What happens in the subsequent chapters of Sefer Melachim is that as Bnei Yisrael are disloyal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it isn't so much that HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes them. Rather, it's that he says, okay, the deal is off. We're no longer in a brit, and now you're on your own. Well, we said when any little nation is on their own, then they're desperate to find someone to protect them. And we said that when a woman who is accustomed to being in a relationship suddenly finds herself on her own, sometimes she is desperate to find a new suitor. And we said the problem is that the patience and the virtue and the careful looking that are required to ensure that it works are not always in place. And so sometimes she will hook up with someone who is inappropriate. And then we know what happens. That doesn't give her what she's looking for. This is exactly what the Navi says. Let's read this pasuk again. Pasuk kafchet. Vatizni el bnei Ashur. Why did Yehuda turn to Ashur? Because she was alone. Because she was suffering from all sorts of enemies attacking her. Because she had originally been unfaithful to her husband, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is the sovereign king in the Vassal Treaty. He takes away his protection. And so now Yehuda is desperate. So she turned, ooh, Ashur, they're big and strong. That's great. Vatizni el Ashur, el bnei Ashur, mi bilti sov atech. What that means is there's an expectation. I'm going to enter into a relationship and it will be fulfilling. But this is what Hashem says. Because you're so desperate, you enter into the relationship, and then it's not fulfilling. You don't get from the other side what you wanted. You wanted love, you wanted protection, you wanted something that was long-term, just what every young girl wants. But because you ran into this desperate and delusional, you don't get it. So you're in the relationship, but mebilti sovatech. There's no sova. There's no sense of fulfillment. There's no sense of that hunger now being satiated. Vatiznim v'gam lo savat. And you go on doing this. It becomes almost habitual. Vatirbi et taznutech el eretz Canaan. Sure, you made a deal with Ashur, paid lots of taxes, and then when push came to shove and you were attacked, Ashur left all the way to the bank. And so there you were again, open and exposed and desperate for protection. So this time in Pasuk Chavtet, who did you turn to? Vatirbi et taznutech el eretz Canaan. Kazdima, other directions, maybe within Eretz Canaan, for some type of support. V'gam bizot lo savat. Because when you're just desperate and you'll take anybody, it'll never be fulfilling. And so this goes on and on. It becomes very self-destructive, habitual behavior. Okay? A couple more psukim here. Ma amula libatech neum Hashem Elokim ba'asotech et kol ele ma'asei isha zona shaletet bivnotayich gabech berosh kol derech v'ramatech asit bechol rechov v'lo hayit kazona lekales etnan. Your behavior, Hashem says of his unfaithful wife, was lower than that of a zona. Why? Because when a woman is reduced to that type of behavior, at least she does so with the insistence of some type of remuneration in return. That's the only reason someone does such actions. But what is happening here? Here, Yehuda is so desperate for even just a promise of protection that she gives everything up front and receives nothing in return. And so in that way, her predicament is even more desperate and lowly than that of a woman of ill repute who will say, wait, as long as there's remuneration up front. But here, there isn't anything even of that. Okay. Now, so this is what we've sort of surveyed so far is really in one broad thrust the history of Am Yisrael from Yetziat Mitzrayim through Mamad Har Sinai, through the glory periods of David Shlomo, through periods of tension in the relationship, abandonment by the husband, desperation, desperately looking for other suitors around. And now Hashem says the following. Let's go to Pasuk Lamed Zayin. Hashem says, Lachen hineni mikabetz et kol me'avayich asher aravt alehem ve'et kol asher ahavt al kol asher sanet ve'kibatzti otam alayich misaviv ve'gileiti ervatech alehem ve'ra'u et kol ervatech. Hashem, I would say the rejected former husband, is fed up. And now he is bringing his wife to justice. What is justice? Justice is going to be, it's kind of colorful, a little cruel perhaps in modern terms, to have all of the men with whom she had flirted until now to come around and have they themselves execute judgment upon her. And this is what he says. Pasuk Lamed Chet, Ushvatetich mishpetei noafot v'shavchot dam unetatich dam chema v'kina. And they are going to judge you as an adulterous woman would be judged. V'natati otach bi'adam v'harsu gabech v'nitzu romotaich v'ifshitu otach begadayich v'lakchu klei tifartech v'nichuch erom ve'irya. There's a mixing in and out here of imagery of the Churban, that is, what will they do? Harsu gabech v'nitzu ramotaich. There's going to be destruction. But Gaba and Ramah are sort of like znut shops that she opened up. That's the lashon that appears earlier. V'ifshitu otach begadayich. Right? If you were mafkir yourself, you gave yourself willingly to them, well, now they are going to humiliate you in this fashion. V'lakchu klei tifartech v'hinichuch erom ve'irya. Erom ve'irya is exactly the lashon with which the parak had begun, that every baby is born in that state. And so in her sinful way, she's going to go back to that state. Two more psukim. Ve'elu alayich kahal ve'ragmu otech ba'aven uvitkuch b'charvotam. That's the Churban. There's going to be blood everywhere. V'sarfu batayich ba'esh v'asubach shvatim le'nei nashim rabot v'hishpatich mizona v'gam etnan lo titni od. But one thing that will come of this mishpat hanoafot, this judgment of women of ill repute, is that there will be no more znut going on here. You will no longer turn to any of these figures because even you will be convinced that there's no point in doing that. This is what I want to do here in Yehezkel Tetzai. As we can all clearly understand, this depiction of the history of Am Yisrael is from the perspective of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of the damaged or of the hurt husband, of the spurned husband, of the sovereign who gave a good deal and didn't find the vassal worthy of living up to it. The question that arises from this parak is, where does this leave the woman? What is her perception of this? You know, just talking about like dating things is very helpful. Sometimes, you know, you see a friend in a type of dating situation and you're like, oh my gosh, this is just not good. This is going to be bad news. Bad news. And everyone can see it's bad news. The only person that can't see that it's bad news is the person themselves. And it's very hard sometimes to convince someone who's in a very bad situation. I see nodding heads here. It's all very, very common. You know, if we could only just say to them, hello, wake up, smell, look in the mirror, just look at what's happening. That's very hard. People don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear their delusions broken. And sometimes there's nothing left to do other than just to let them crash into the ground. But at some point, people begin to say, why does this keep happening to me? What's going on in my life? What's wrong with me? That type of cheshbon nefesh happens sooner or later. This is where Eicha Perek Aleph begins. Let's look at Eicha Perek Aleph. Everything we've done now sets the table perfectly. All those psukim that seem totally incomprehensible, suddenly they are inevitable. They are the only thing that could be said. Let's have a look. In my humble opinion, Eicha Perek Aleph has two characters in it. There is Bat Zion, if you will, the woman from Yehezkel Tetzayin, and we can know that she is speaking anytime we have things that are in Guf Rishon, in first person. So, for example, when we have in Pasuk Tet Zayin, Al ele ani bochia. Eini yordamayim. That is Bat Zion. That is the woman talking. But there is another character, as it were, in Eicha Perek Aleph. That is, for lack of a better term, the narrator. That is the person describing what's going on. Except that the narrator that we have in Eicha Perek Aleph is different than the narrator that we have throughout the Tanakh. Let me explain what I mean by that. When we have, let's say, the first pasuk of the Torah, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Who is saying that pasuk? Not who gave that pasuk at Har Sinai, not who wrote down that pasuk. When you read that, who is saying Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz? It's not Hashem talking, because otherwise it would be Bereshit barati et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Right? It's, as it were, some type of narrator who happens to sit bamromim next to the kisei hakavod, knows everything, and tells us what is happening. We never think about the narrator throughout Tanakh. I don't know, Ele Shmot or any of the Sfarim that just tell the story. We don't think, who is this? But in Eicha, the narrator is in the story. It is someone who has endured the Churban. Chazal tell us that it was written by Yirmiyahu. We will see that the way in which the narrator speaks is very sympathetic to Bat Zion. He is the friend that wants to help Bat Zion. Just like when we see a friend in destructive behavior, it's very hard for us to figure out exactly how do we help. We can't say everything. If we say everything, it'll be hurtful. It won't be received. If we say nothing, then we do nothing to help. What do we do? As we all know, when we have a friend who is in deep trouble, it could be in a relationship, it could be in business issues, it could be, Rahman al-Litzlan, in legal problems. Anytime we see a friend in deep trouble, always, one surefire thing that's very good to get started is to empathize, is to mouth what that person is feeling. That is to say, if someone is feeling so alone, the worst thing to say is, get over it, there are other fish in the sea. No one ever wants to hear that, right? When you no, if you've just broken up, what you want to hear is, that is the hardest thing in the world. Nothing is harder. Thank you, now I feel better, right? If you're able to say what the person is thinking, legitimate their feelings, then that creates an opening to then help them get perspective on what they might have been missing. Let's look at the first two psukim and see how suddenly they just burst to life. Eicha yashva badad, ha'ir rabati am, hayeta ke'almana, rabati bagoyim, sarati bamedinot, hayeta lamas. Now, I think many people just read this, Eicha yashva badad, she's sitting alone. Why did Yirmiyahu describe Yerushalayim as sitting alone? Well, it's after the Churban, and she's in pain. But it's this, yashva badad. She's alone. Once upon a, why is she alone? What does it mean that she's alone? It means there's none of her partners are there for her. Ha'ir rabati am hayta ke'almana. And you might say, why does Yirmiyahu say that she is hayta ke'almana? Well, an almana is really, a very sad thing to be, and Yerushalayim after the Churban is very sad. But it's much more than that. What is an almana? An almana, of course, is a woman whose husband has died. Now let's think, why is Yirmiyahu saying about Yerushalayim that she is hayta ke'almana? Like a woman whose husband has died. What havamina, what thoughts does Yehuda and Yerushalayim after the Churban have? Where did all this come from? How could this possibly be? Who would have thought such destruction? Who would have thought that the Beis HaMikdash could come tumbling down? It must be, or certainly one possibility, what seems to be very reasonable possibility is either there's no God, there was no God, there is no more God, or there's no connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so, hayta ke'almana, she was like a woman who has no partner, who has no one to protect her. This is exactly how Yerushalayim feels. Hayta ke'almana, rabati bagoyim, sarati bamdinot. She who once was so popular with all the other nations, as Yehezkel said, in the glory days, in the time of Shlomo, hayta lemas. Because when a person has, suddenly crashed, often they crash from a high place. I thought I had this amazing relationship, and now he dumped me. I thought that I was going to be a millionaire 10 times over, and suddenly it all evaporated. I thought that I was an honorable citizen, and suddenly I discovered that I faced possibly sitting in jail for 10 years. The difference between the height and the lows of reality are just numbing. And so Yirmiyahu says this to her because that is what she's feeling. Bachol tivkeh balayla, v'dim ata alechya. She cries, there are tears coming down her cheeks. Ein la menachem mikol ohaveha. There's no one there to comfort her. It's not just that she's sitting Shiva by herself in her house and there's no one to come sit Shiva. What does this mean? Ein la menachem mikol ohaveha. Ohaveha here doesn't read, we might translate it those who love her. But what Yirmiyahu means is, Ein la menachem, she has no one to comfort her from all of her lovers, referring back to all of this together, right? She went and flirted. She wasn't a faithful vassal, looking to solve her problems politically. She made all sorts of treaties with anyone else other than her real treaty partner up in Shemayim. So, Ema menachem mikol ohaveha, kol re'eha, all of her friends, bagduba. That's exactly what happened. They took advantage of her. Hayula le'oivim, and became her enemies. And notice the play on words here in Pasuk Bet, between the phrase Ein la menachem mikol ohaveha, all of her lovers, Hayula le'oyevim. The difference between ohev and oyev is a very small distinction. Now, let's see how these three axes of political and theological and the mashal of husband and wife flow in and out of each other in some of the other psukim. Pasuk Yud. Pasuk Yud. Here Yirmiyahu says about those that destroyed the Mikdash. Yado, the oyev, Yado paras tsar al kol machamadeha. He laid his hand on all of her sacred things. That's a mix of imagery. It refers to jewels, it refers to the Kodesh Kodashim, but it uses imagery about abusing a woman as well. Ki ra'ata goyim ba'u mikdasha. She, Bat Zion, saw goyim ba'u mikdasha coming into her mikdash. That is at once a sign of the Churban, Bet HaMikdash, but also ba'u, lavo, bi'ah, right? Mikdasha. It's of assault, a sexual assault upon her. Asher tzivita lo yavo'u bekahalach. Goyim who not only do they have nothing, they couldn't even potentially, some of these goyim, they're prohibited from converting. And so the language here of churban and of abuse of a woman are interwoven within each other. What happens in the rest of the perek, and what we would hope would happen, is that Bat Zion begins to wake up and smell the coffee and realize what's been done. And therefore, when this happens, what a woman would want to come to, what we would hope that she would come to is, well, maybe if my husband is still ready to have me back, maybe I can try to appease him. Now that doesn't fully happen in Eicha, because it's not so easy to appease somebody when you've been unfaithful. But at least you have to get oriented in the right direction. Let's look what she says. Let's look in Pasuk Tet Zayin. She says, this is her speaking now, it's in first person. Al ele ani vochia, eni yorda mayim, ki rachak mimeni menachem meshiv nafshi. Now, why is she crying? She says, ki rachak mimeni menachem meshiv nafshi. There are two ways to translate that phrase. she might be saying, I am crying because there is no one to comfort me. That's a reasonable translation of these words. But there's another way to translate these words. Al ele ani bochia eni yorda mayim ki rachak mimeni menachem meshiv nafshi. I am shedding these tears because the one who is my source of comfort is very far away. In other words, she's now recognized, I thought I could run to this one and run to that one and have protection, and it would be very fuzzy and warm. And now I realize that none of those others were real. They were all illusions. There really is only one address for me. There really is only one source of comfort to whom I can turn, and now I've blown it. And notice HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't come back. Let's see the next pasuk. Ki rachak mimeni menachem meshiv nafshi. Hayu vanai shomimim ki gavar oyev. Pasuk Yud Zayin. Yirmiyahu says, Persa Tzion beyadeha. She has put her hands up, meaning we need to reread Pasuk Tet Zayin the following way. She says, Al ela ani bochia, eni yorda mayim. Ki rachak mimeni menachem meshiv nafshi. She's throwing her hands up to Shamayim in all sorts of different directions, hoping that maybe her real partner will hear her and have a turn of heart. But it doesn't work. Pasuk Yud Zayin. Persat Sion beyadeha. Ein menachem la, and there is no one to comfort her. Why? Tziva Hashem liYaakov, Sivivav Tzarav. All of these enemies that have attacked her have been sent dafka by her spurned husband. So she is a real Nebuch, a real Nebuch. Hayta Yerushalayim lenida beinehem. Let's finish with Psukim Yud Tet and Chaf. She comes to a greater level of consciousness as to what has happened. Karati leme'avai hema rimuni. I called out to my lovers, and what did they do? They just cheated me. Yes, they sweet-talked me. They promised me everything. I paid out everything. I gave them everything and got back nothing in return. Kohanai uzekinai ba'ir gavau ki vikshu ochel lamo v'yashivu et nafsham. And now all of this suffering in Yerushalayim. Pasuk Chaf. Re'ei Hashem. She calls out again to Hashem. Kitzar li me'ai chomar maru. She doesn't speak about these ones are starving or these ones are being stabbed, but she wants Hashem to notice that she herself is suffering because of her lack of connection with Him. Nepach libi b'kirbi. I have had a turn of heart. I don't know if you can hear this, Ribon Olamim. I know that the things that I did were as disloyal and unfaithful as a wife could be. But I have had a real change of heart. Ki maro mariti michutz likla cherev babayit kamavet. And so she comes in the end to this recognition of really what has happened, why the things happened, and where she needs to be. Okay? I think that this is, as I mentioned at the outset, the longest mashal that we have in all of Tanakh. And I think it's just really amazing how it works through the political reality and the theological reality and the metaphor of husband and wife that really brings it all the way through in a way that isn't possible any other way. And I think that really in these times, coming back to where we started with tonight, where we are very suffering, we really want to turn to our Avinu Shebashamayim, our own protective husband. Ribono Shel Olam, you promised you would protect us. We are your wife. We seek your protection. Maybe we've been disloyal in some things. Maybe we haven't lived up to what is needed. But just as Bat Zion calls out here, we too say, Re'ei Hashem kitzar li, me'ai chom amaru ne'epach libi b'kirbi. Erev Tov.